And Jesus is saying here, he's saying here today, very challenging. And he says, "Do not think I have come to bring peace to the world. No, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I came to set sons against their fathers, daughters against their mothers, daughters-in-law against their mothers-in-law. Your worst enemies will be the members of your own family. Those who love their father or mother more than me are not fit to be my disciples. Those who love their son or daughter more than me are not fit to be my disciples. Those who do not take up their cross and follow in my steps are not fit to be my disciples. Those who try to gain their own life will lose it, but those who lose their life for my sake will save it." Very challenging, and Jesus is speaking. When Jesus speaks, he doesn't tell us things. He doesn't tell us things to do that we're not capable of doing. So we're capable of doing whatever he asks with the grace of God. When he asks to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, he gives us the graces, and to be able to do that. Be merciful as your heavenly Father. We can be merciful too, but we need him and understand who he is, and to abide in him, as he says, to receive those graces to be able to do that. But do not think that I have come to bring peace. We think Jesus all the time came to bring peace. That's exactly. But the peace he's talking about, in that peace, there has to be truth and justice. And that's where Jesus is coming from. Without peace, we need justice to have peace. We need justice and mercy as well. Can he just be all merciful without justice? And the justice is usually bringing truth. And when we start to bring truth into the world, as we all do, and that's where all the divisions happen. And that's where he's saying the divisions will happen in your family. In our families, then someone gets called by God in the family. They start to learn a new way of life. This challenges those within the family unit. And you have those who'll agree and those who disagree. And you'll have what was said there, sons against their father, daughters against their mother. And I have seen this over the 25 years. I've seen how my converting away from the road that I was on, led me on a sort of lonely walk for a while, because even members of my family then found it difficult to relate in that respect. So you find that division was there as well, because you're living a life that is now sort of way feeling opposed to the way they're living. And this is exactly the same as what I understand what he's saying there, that division. He says elsewhere, I think it's, is it 3 against 2 and 2 against 3 in the family. And over the last wee while, and it's took 25 years to get there, many, many times you find that many family members, sometimes they're with you in what you're saying, and then they drift. And they can drift back, and then some other family members come in. And so you have this conflict again and division, that there are those who are for you and those who are against. And they're for you because you're following Christ. And he says, if you listen to me, they'll listen to you. And if they listen to me, they'll listen to you. So when we go in and we start to live this way of life, it causes great division. And even if I speak my own truth, never mind God's truth, revealed truth, if I speak my own truth, sometimes am I even going to be believed? If I was to come back from a holiday, like any of you come back from a holiday, and you start to say, to people, this is what happened and that's what happened. And, at the end of the day, you're trusting those they're trusting you that you're telling the truth, and you're trusting others that they believe what you're saying. You know, sometimes you can say things and people never believe you. People just automatically have the blinkers on, and maybe some sort of judgment on you, and they hold that judgment. They never see you changing, never see you. They'll never see you being that new person, because they're always looking back to the person they saw with those blinkers on. And Jesus speaks about that in another part of the gospel where he goes into his own town, and they've heard about him. They've heard about him. Oh, here's the kid come good. He's went away, and he is something that he's coming in. Who does he think he is? And so you begin to, Jesus says, he wasn't accepted. Very few believed anything that he said and had any faith in him. So he states that himself. And that's why he left. That's why he left the town. They had blinkers. They just always saw him. You hear that, that's the carpenter's son. So it is. That's the carpenter's son. And, you look at, ourselves in that position today, in our life, who, people judging us by our parents, whether they were, what sort of, were they what level they were at, and were they culturized, or were they, people judge you at different levels. Were they educated? Where were they educated? All different ways. And it seems to be then, we'll only accept you if you fit our perspective, of you. Only in how we see you, in our wee groups, our wee communities. And, and here you get this division because people are judging you by their own perception. So this is where the truth comes in, and we find this when we go into our own families, we go into our own communities, go into our own churches, and we get judged on the way they see you. If you're just this, you have to speak in a certain way. You have to, act in a certain way. And unless you act in that certain way, then they'll accept you. If you act, or you come from a certain different, way of living than they're living, then they're wary of you. So that's what I find, and I find this here a great gospel passage. That when you walk this road, you will. I thank God when I see family members, especially, because they're the people you love the most. Let's make no bones about that. Everybody loves their family, and wants their family closest to their family, and they want their family. What's good is you want that good for them, whether they deserve it or not. That's the real Christian way. If I wasn't living a Christian way, I'd probably want people to deserve what they get. But the Christian way is that that's what loving your neighbour and loving your enemy is, that you wish them well. You wish good upon them. You wish the blessing of God on them as well. And that brings you peace. It brings you peace of mind. It brings you happiness and joy within your own life, because you're doing the will of God then. And that's where the peace and happiness and joy comes from. But that takes a long time to get. You don't get that in a day. That takes a personal relationship with the Lord, knowing what you have to do, knowing what He has done, and going through, great grievances at times to get there. Like the woman at the well, or all those layers of past sin and obstructions that are there, how we perceive life ourselves, how we look with blinkers, our own blinkers, and how we, at times we don't, how we filter things in. We'll only filter what we want to hear ourselves. So So this is really important. It's a really important passage, and it's really important because none of us are. People can talk. People always talk. I go out there. I really never take a person on board. I've never really taken it, and it's probably the way I was brought up. I was brought up to, as I wasn't really a follower type person. I wasn't being a follower. I wasn't one that went with the crowd and whatever they done, and I've always thanked God for that. I wasn't someone who followed the crowd, because that's what happens a lot today. People just follow with the crowd, whatever the crowds do. I was brought up to be honest, and sometimes just blatantly honest, and it's never really, in a way, I wouldn't change it for anything. It's caused me great pain, because not everybody really, not everybody takes to honesty and sometimes blatant honesty. And then you'll hear, well, you have to be loving and honest. Yes. But the point is, when people say that, they say as if it's some sort of antidote to what you're, how you, or how to, how you. Well, if I'd be lovingly honest, then right. So that must be then why. Oh, I'll be lovingly honest, and that'll get me through everything without any pain and suffering. And the point is that you can be loving and honest and still get pain. And you say things that are loving in your part and honest, and people still look at you and say that you're coming across as rude or sometimes, sometimes I am. Sometimes I can't help being rude. Sometimes I get, sometimes we all get angry. But that's the point here. The point here is, I believe that what we need to do is, what, in my own personal walk, is, yes, take responsibility for things. We'll take responsibility for our own truth and live in our own truth and love and life. But the point is that I feel that there's so much judgment today and so much gossip about others judging others. And I think that's the deadliest form of sinfulness and separation and division in communities, in churches, in towns and cities, and all over the world, on a worldwide scale. This sense of judging everyone else, judge everyone, but you hear it in governments and everyone. You hear this judgment of the other nation. They're the ones that done the wrong. I'm the one that done. I'm good, and they're wrong. And this gossip you get of people in society now, and it's awful. That's the judgment that they make, and they never can sit down and see, that if as something true, maybe it's something true. Maybe are they right? Are they saying something that's true, and I may disagree with it just because it's true? But if I'm truly an honest person, I should be agreeing with it rather than causing more division by gossiping and talking about the messenger. And I get that a lot. Because I say things as they are, and I find people, and who am I? I mean, I'm no perfect. I'm very far from perfect. I mean, the Lord Himself went and they crucified Him. For doing the same thing. I mean, I'm a sinful human being. I can get my heckles up. I get angry too, and I look at St. Paul would be a great man I would look at. I read the Acts of the Apostles, and I think St. Paul just about fell out with everybody. St. Paul must have been a hard man to live with and be, to be in the road with. He must have been, because he just fell out with everybody. And yet he's one of the greatest missionaries, saints in the history of the church. And it's to do with that God calls everybody of different, ethnicity and different religions and He calls everybody of different paths of life and different ways of life, different characters, different personalities. And He says, use it for me. But what happens is all those different things that I mentioned, people judge us by them. So we get judged by our where we come from, our nationality. We get judged by our characters. We get judged by the certain personality that we have. And the thing is that God's using that to get to certain and different people. Of course, we can, that's the whole point. The whole point is that I find that, and instead of judging people, or if I do judge people, I always remember the three fingers pointing back. When I point a finger at you, see what you done, or what do I tell you about him, or what do I tell you? I'll tell you a thing or two about her, And there's three fingers always pointing back at me, and I got to always be aware of that. Am I pointing at somebody else because of something that I recognize in myself, or something I deny in myself and point it at other people and deny the very same thing that I've done before? And I think if people took that way and looked at that, they would be less judgmental because of the pain and the hurt that it causes. Instead of looking at something that's honest, when somebody's saying something that they believe, for a person came to me there, I mentioned no names or anything, but a person came up and said to me, have you been back to Mass? I says, yes, great, beautiful to be back to Mass, absolutely fantastic. It's been a long time, it's great to be able to receive the Lord again. And he says, well, I says, were you there? No. What? Why, dear goodness me, very devoted person, very devout. And I thought, oh, dear goodness, why not? He says, well, you see, they're asking us to receive the Lord in our hands. And in a way, I looked at that and says, well, that's a very, very reverent way, to receive our Lord in the tongue, as we did up until, the last 50, 60 years. That's the way we received the Lord, in a very reverential way. And I did myself. Always received the Lord in my tongue. Very reverent. And I thought, but is that now going to stop you going and receiving him at all? And I thought, I'll try and work in between this. Sort of, I'll try it. Yes, that's good. I'm not going to put somebody down who's very, who's got that, because I love the Eucharist. I say things and out of my love for the Eucharist comes across very, we can come across in a way that people think we're a bit over the top, but people think we're over the top because, we're doing something that is maybe a wee bit more than them. So they think, oh, they're over the top, they take it a wee bit too far. So, to keep in line with the scriptures, we need to, the reason here is again to do with truth and the sword of truth. And Jesus says, so he's talking about the church, those in our own household. Those in our own household could be those members of our own churches, our own communities in the churches, as well as our towns and cities. And the reason for that is that, one asks then, well, what's the truth here? Does one receive the Eucharist or Blessed Lord in the hand, or do we receive him in our tongue and therefore, get rid of this confusion? And do we even know that one thing's right and the other's wrong? Because if one's wrong, then we should put a stop to that very quickly. So this is what's going on in our church at the minute. It's going on in society. It's going on in our communities. And it's to do with truth. So we need to learn what this, to find what the absolute truth again. I was taught, that there's what they call nihilism. And it's just this, a nihilistic world would be that the communism, and that would be a nihilistic world, meaning that if there's no God, then there's no truth. So they put this is what's happening in our governments, the world governments, this new world order that's pushing in, is to push out, you push God out, then you push out the truth, and you push out morals and good, that good ethics and stuff that we were all grew up with. And so there's no absolute truth then. So you can do whatever you want. And it becomes very relative. That's what they tell us today now. What they call relativism in the church is that relativism means that well, whatever you believe, that's okay. It's relative to you, your truth. If you believe that, that's fine. And this is why we're in such, even within the church, we're finding that there's a lot of relativism in the church where we're beginning to get, all these different, homosexuality and transgenderism and all these things that are coming in now. You're getting, well, sure, that's relative then. That's relative to you. And there's no absolute truth. They're pushing the absolute truth out to accept things in the way, that's okay with you, can accept that. And we'll understand your opinion as well in that. We'll understand you feel that way. But there's people who live by God's truth because God is truth. And Jesus says, I'm the truth. And he came into the world to take us and save us and bring us to that kingdom where he is the way there. And the scriptures and the teaching of the church discerns that word, discerns the gospel, discerns what he says and its meaning. So therefore, that's how we get through him. So you push God and Christ and Christianity and you push it out of the church, and then you're left with, as I said there, the last video, you're left like a river with its banks, and it's those banks are, directing the river and guiding the river to its source. Without the banks, we're just a lake, a stagnant water. There's no moving anywhere. It's just lying there, stagnant. So if we want to be moving somewhere, we need boundaries to guide us there, and that's what the scriptures do. They give us boundaries, and that's what the Lord's talking about today. Those boundaries will bring us true peace, but it takes the sword of truth. They are the boundaries. That's what Jesus came to tell us, a way of living in truth that sets those boundaries to guide us on that road which leads to life, against the road that's wide and leading to perdition. Thank you.